Principal expels farmer's son. The next day, a billionaire's helicopter arrives at his. Jason's backpack hit the ground with a dull thud, but the pain in his chest was far worse. He'd just been expelled, not for breaking any rules, not for failing grades, but simply because he was a farmer's son. "You don't belong here," Principal Carter's cold voice echoed in his mind. "This school is for respectable families." Jason had walked home that day with heavy steps, his dreams shattered, his pride bruised. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the next morning a sound would shake the very foundations of that prestigious school. Because when a billionaire's helicopter roared over Westbridge Academy, everything changed. The morning sun had barely risen over the rolling hills of Milltown, but Jason Miller was already awake, his hands stained with soil from the fields. At 16, Jason had long grown used to hard work, waking before dawn to help his father tend to the land, rushing through breakfast so he could catch the early bus to Westbridge Academy. Westbridge wasn't just any school. It was a place of prestige, where the sons and daughters of CEOs, politicians, and old money families gathered. Jason didn't belong, not by their standards. His clothes were worn, his sneakers second-hand, and the scent of fresh earth clung to him no matter how hard he scrubbed. But he had earned his place. Through sheer determination, Jason had won a full academic scholarship. He'd studied late into the nights, long after the chores were done, his eyes red from exhaustion but his heart full of hope. His dream was simple: to build a better life for his parents, for himself, to break the cycle. What he hadn't expected was how little any of that mattered. Jason Miller, Principal Carter's voice had called over the intercom that morning, summoning him to the office. Jason's stomach turned. He had never been in trouble before. Clutching his notebook, he walked the long hallways, feeling the stares of classmates who barely acknowledged him most days. The principal's office was cold, the blinds drawn tight. Carter didn't look up as Jason entered. Jason sat, heart pounding. "I've reviewed your file," Carter said, his voice as sharp as the starched collar of his shirt. "Your grades are impressive, yes, but Westbridge Academy is not just about academics." Jason frowned. "Sir, it's about upholding a standard," Carter continued. "A reputation, your background, your family's occupation. It doesn't align with what this institution represents." Jason's throat tightened. "But I earned my scholarship." "This is not about scholarships. This is about image, and frankly, having a farm boy among the sons of senators and CEOs, it sends the wrong message." Jason felt like the floor had vanished beneath him. "You're expelling me because of where I come from." Carter stood, straightening his tie. "You don't belong here, Jason, and I'm doing what's best for the school." Two security guards entered, as if on cue. Jason's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stand tall. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. Not now. As they escorted him out, students whispered, some with pity, most with amusement. Mason Wright, the son of a tech magnate, smirked. "Guess you're going back to the farm, huh, Miller?" Jason didn't answer. He didn't have to. The ache in his chest spoke louder than any words. By the time he got home, the sun was setting behind the fields. His mother was on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron, eyes wide with worry. His father stood silent, his face like stone. "He expelled me," Jason said quietly. His mother gasped. His mother's shoulders sagged. That night, Jason lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He felt worthless, not because he believed Carter, but because he had believed that hard work was enough. His voice as if it were a secret, he whispered to the dark. The next morning, as the students of Westbridge gathered for class, a sound unlike any they'd heard before shattered the usual calm. A deafening roar filled the sky. Books dropped, phones came out. A helicopter, sleek, black and massive, descended onto the front lawn. Principal Carter burst from his office, red-faced, barking orders, but no one listened. The doors to the helicopter opened. Samuel Kingston. The name alone sent waves of whispers through the crowd. The founder of Kingston Enterprises, the most powerful name in agriculture, a billionaire, a legend. Principal Carter's face turned pale. "Mr. Kingston, this is highly irregular." Kingston raised a hand. "I'm here for Jason Miller." The courtyard froze. Jason? The boy they'd laughed at? The boy Carter had expelled. The falconer's Jason heard the same roar. His heart skipped as he rushed outside. The same helicopter now rested in their field. And Samuel Kingston was walking toward him. "You are Jason Miller," he said, his voice low, powerful. "Yes, sir," Jason stammered. Kingston nodded. "Your father helped me build my empire. I'm here to repay that debt." Jason stared, speechless. Kingston's eyes narrowed. "Get in, we've got business to settle." Jason looked back at his parents, his mother trembling, his father wide-eyed. And then, heart-pounding, he stepped into a world he never thought he'd be part of. Because sometimes, when the world turns its back on you, fate sends someone to turn it around. And that someone just might arrive. In a billionaire's helicopter, Session 1. The Price of Pride. The helicopter lifted into the morning sky, its blades slicing through the air like a blade through silence. Jason sat stiffly in the leather seat, his hands gripping the armrests, eyes wide as the farm shrank beneath him. His heart was racing, not just from the flight, but from the sheer impossibility of what was happening. Across from him, Samuel Kingston sat with the calm of a man who had seen the world bend to his will. His sharp suit didn't crease, his tie didn't shift in the wind. Jason wondered how anyone could be so composed in the face of such chaos. "Why are you doing this?" Jason finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kingston didn't look up from the tablet in his hand. "Because I don't like bullies," he said flatly, "and because I repay my debts." Jason frowned, confused. "Debts?" Kingston glanced at him, his eyes hard but not unkind. "Your father. Years ago, when I was nobody, I started a small agricultural project in the middle of nowhere. Most people laughed at me. Your father didn't. He worked that land like it mattered. Like I mattered." Jason swallowed hard. He'd heard stories of his father's youth, but nothing like this. "And now?" Jason asked cautiously. "Now," Kingston said, leaning forward, "we're going to see if you have the same strength." When they arrived at Westbridge Academy, the scene was surreal. The lawn was filled with students, teachers, board members, everyone who had witnessed Jason's humiliation just a day before. Their eyes followed the helicopter as it descended, mouths open in disbelief. Jason stepped out behind Kingston, his heart pounding louder than the helicopter's roar. He saw Mason near the front, his usual smirk replaced by a pale, stunned expression. Principal Carter was there too, his face twisted in a mixture of confusion and barely contained anger. But as Kingston approached, all of Carter's authority seemed to drain away. "Mr. Kingston, this is highly unusual," Carter began. Kingston cut him off with a single look. "I believe you expelled Jason Miller," Kingston said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Carter straightened his tie nervously. "Yes, well, given his background, we didn't feel he—" "You felt wrong," Kingston snapped, "and now you'll fix it." Carter's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. "I'm offering this institution $10 million, Kingston continued, his voice calm but icy, "but only if Jason is reinstated immediately with a public apology." Gasps rippled through the crowd. $10 million. That was more than the school had ever received in donations. Carter looked around desperately, searching for support, but found none. Even the board members looked away, unwilling to stand against the billionaire. Jason stood frozen. It was like watching a dream or a movie. He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be seen. But now, every eye was on him. 5 seconds, Kingston said. Carter blinked. "What?" "You have 5 seconds to decide. Mr. Kingston, please." 4. "This is a misunderstanding." Carter's forehead was slick with sweat. 2. I reinstate Jason Miller, Carter blurted, his voice cracking, and I apologize for any unfair treatment. The crowd erupted in whispers, some astonished, others delighted. Mason looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Kingston nodded slowly. Jason felt like he couldn't breathe. This was more than justice. It was power, and for the first time in his life, it was on his side. But as they returned to the helicopter, Jason hesitated. I don't have to stay here anymore, do I? He asked. Kingston turned, studying him. You could. Or you could come with me. There's more to life than proving yourself to people who never cared. Jason looked back at the school, the halls he had once admired, the classmates who had looked down on him. No, Jason said. I'm done here. Kingston smiled, just slightly. Good, because I have bigger plans for you. As they lifted off again, Jason didn't look back. The school, the fields, the shame, it all shrank beneath him. Ahead lay something new, something unknown, something his heart had only dared to hope for. Section 2. The Weight of Expectations. The city skyline stretched out beneath them, glittering in the morning light like a sea of glass and steel. Jason had never seen anything like it. From the small, dusty roads of Milltown to the soaring towers of downtown, it felt like stepping into another world, one he had only glimpsed in magazines. But now here he was, seated beside one of the most powerful men in the country, his old life shrinking with every mile. The helicopter landed smoothly on the rooftop of a sleek skyscraper. The logo, Kingston Enterprises, was emblazoned in bold silver letters against dark stone. Jason's heart pounded as the door opened, revealing a team of well-dressed staff waiting as if they had known he was coming all along. Welcome to your new life, Kingston said, stepping out without hesitation. Jason followed, his legs shaky, his mind still reeling. He didn't belong here, not really. This wasn't his world. But as they entered the glass doors, there was no turning back. Inside, everything gleamed. Polished floors, modern art on the walls, towering windows that let sunlight flood every corner. People moved with purpose, nodding respectfully at Kingston, their eyes flicking curiously to Jason. This way, Kingston's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Elise, said. They stepped into an elevator that soared upward, higher than Jason thought buildings could go. His ears popped as he glanced nervously at Kingston, who stood with his hands clasped behind his back, as calm as ever. You'll be living here, Kingston said as the doors opened to a stunning penthouse suite. Jason stepped in, breath-catching. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city stretching endlessly. A kitchen gleamed with stainless steel. A bedroom, larger than his entire house, sat to the side, complete with bookshelves, a desk, and a bed that looked too perfect to sleep in. I can't stay here, Jason stammered. Kingston raised a brow. Why not? This place. It's too much. You're not just anything, Kingston interrupted, his voice firm. You're here because you have potential, because you deserve better than what they gave you. Jason turned away, his chest tight. Everyone's going to expect something from me now. What if I mess this up? Kingston stepped closer, his gaze intense. Everyone should expect something from you. That's what greatness feels like, Jason. Pressure, fear, doubt. But you don't let it break you. You let it shape you. Jason swallowed hard. His father had always told him to be humble, to work hard and expect little. But this was a different world, one where failure wasn't just about grades. It was about reputation, power, legacy. Later that afternoon, Jason sat alone on the edge of the massive bed, his backpack still dusty from the farm, resting by his feet. He hadn't opened it since the day before. His textbooks, notebooks, all the things that had meant so much, suddenly felt small. A soft knock came at the door. Elise entered, holding a tablet. Mr. Kingston asked me to give you this. Jason took it, his eyes scanning the screen. It was an itinerary: meetings, workshops, private tutoring sessions. Mrs., he said, dazed. You'll get used to it, Elise replied, almost kindly. Everyone here is watching. They want to see if you'll rise to the challenge. Jason looked up sharply. And if I don't? Victorian hesitated. She paused. Then you'll prove them right. That night, Jason couldn't sleep. He stood by the window, staring at the city lights. So many people, so many stories. Where did his fit in? His phone buzzed, an old, scratched-up thing he'd almost forgotten he had. A message from his father. We're proud of you, son, no matter what. Just remember who you are. Jason's throat tightened. Who was he now? A farm boy, the expelled student, or the apprentice to a billionaire? The weight of it all pressed on his shoulders. But then he thought of Carter's words, Mason's laughter, the long nights studying by candlelight, believing it was all for nothing. No, he wasn't going to waste this chance. The next morning, Jason stood tall in the boardroom of Kingston Enterprises. The city stretched out behind him, the hum of ambition thick in the air. Kingston entered, nodding once. Let's begin. And so it did. The lessons were hard, the expectations even harder. But Jason had carried heavy things before, bales of hay, sacks of seed, the weight of being less than. This was just another load, one he was ready to bear. Section 3. The promise he made to himself. The days that followed moved faster than Jason could have ever imagined. Gone with the slow, predictable rhythms of farm life, replaced by a whirlwind of boardrooms, strategy meetings, private lessons, and endless faces. Some kind, some calculating. At night, when the city lights flickered outside his window and the noise of ambition finally settled, Jason would lie awake, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse suite. It still didn't feel real. He wasn't used to this world. But every morning when he slipped on the tailored suit Kingston had ordered for him, tightened the knot in his tie with trembling fingers, and stepped into the vast corridors of Kingston Enterprises, he reminded himself why he was here. Because he had promised. Not to Kingston, not to his parents, to himself. It started on his fourth night in the city. Jason had just returned from a late dinner meeting where he barely spoke, overwhelmed by terms like equity, valuation, and mergers. He'd sat next to Kingston the entire time, nodding when expected, trying to hide how lost he felt. Now the silence of the penthouse felt almost too loud. His phone buzzed. A video message from home. He tapped it open, and there was his father, seated on the old wooden porch, the familiar creak of the chair bringing tears to Jason's eyes. Hey son, his father began, voice rough but steady. Just wanted you to know, your ma and I watched that news clip today. They were talking about Kingston and that school of yours. Said you stood next to him like a man, like someone who knew his worth. Jason's throat tightened. We're proud of you, his father continued, but I know it's not easy. You're walking a different road now, one I can't guide you on. But whatever happens, just remember, don't let them change what's good in you. Don't let them make you forget who you are. Jason sat in the darkness long after the message ended, his hands clenched into fists. He stepped onto the balcony, the cold wind whipping at his face. Below, the city pulsed with energy. So many lives, so many stories. And his? It was just beginning. He thought about Principal Carter, about the boys who had laughed at him, about the hollow apologies made for money's sake. And he made a silent vow. He will never look down on me again, he whispered. People never decide my worth. He didn't care if he failed in this world, as long as he failed trying. Jason wasn't here for comfort or luxury or even revenge. He was here to become someone who didn't have to bow, someone who could one day return to Milltown and look his father in the eye, not just as a son, but as a man who had made something of himself. That night, Jason made a promise to never quit, no matter how hard it got. The next morning he arrived in the office early, before the staff had even turned on the lights. Kingston found him there, standing by the windows, reviewing financial reports he barely understood. "You're here early," Kingston noted, impressed. Jason turned, eyes steady. "I'm not wasting this chance." A pause. "Good," he said, "because I wasn't going to let you." Inside was a list of names, dates, companies. "What's this?" Jason asked. "Who tried to stop me when I started?" Kingston replied. "I want you to understand something, Jason. This world isn't kind. It doesn't reward effort alone. It rewards those who fight harder than the rest." Jason nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. "I won't let you down," he said. Kingston's eyes narrowed slightly, as if testing him. "We'll see." The day's schedule was brutal. Finance in the morning, business ethics in the afternoon, strategy meetings in between. Jason stumbled through much of it, but he refused to give up. He stayed late, reading until his eyes burned. He asked questions, even when they made him look foolish. He took notes, practiced speaking, rehearsed handshakes in front of the mirror. And at night, when the city quieted again, he stood on the balcony, reminded himself of the promise. One evening, Elise handed him a thick envelope. "What's this?" Jason asked. "Letter. From Westbridge Academy." Jason frowned, heart beating faster. He tore it open. Inside was a formal invitation. A ceremony to honor Kingston's donation, and JC was invited as a guest of honor. His chest tightened. "Want me back?" he muttered. "Of course they do," Elisa said, her voice unreadable. "You're useful now." Jason stared at the letter, memories flooding back. The sneers, the whispers, the cold dismissal. "Will you go?" Elise asked. Jason folded the letter carefully. Yes, not because he needed their validation, but because he had something to prove. Not to them, to himself. That night he stood by the window, staring at his reflection in the glass. No longer the farm boy. Not yet the man he wanted to be, but getting closer. And that was enough, for now. Section 4, the night of the ceremony. The night air was thick with the hum of expensive cars and murmurs of anticipation. Outside Westbridge Academy, spotlights illuminated the grand stone facade, casting long shadows over the manicured lawns. Banners hung high, proudly displaying a new era, celebrating Kingston Enterprises and our future. Jason stood still for a moment at the bottom of the marble steps, staring up at the building that had once felt like a fortress, a place that had rejected him. Tonight, he wasn't returning as the boy they expelled. Tonight, he was here as the guest of honor. He adjusted the sleeves of his tailored suit, dark and sharp, the fabric a far cry from the worn flannel shirts he used to wear. But even now, beneath the polished exterior, his heart thudded with nerves. "I don't belong here," a voice in his head whispered. But then he remembered the promise. He took a slow breath, straightened his shoulders, and climbed the steps. Inside the grand hall, the transformation was breathtaking. Chandeliers sparkled above, their light reflecting off crystal glasses and silver cutlery. The room buzzed with the elite CEOs, board members, local politicians, and the very people who once wouldn't have given Jason a second glance. At the center of it all stood Samuel Kingston, surrounded by admirers, his presence commanding as ever. The moment he spotted Jason, his lips curved into a rare smile. "You clean up well," Kingston said, extending a hand. Jason shook it firmly. "Thanks, I'm still getting used to it." "You'll get there." Elise appeared at his side, handing him a small card. "Your speech," she said softly. "You'll be introduced after the headmaster." Jason's stomach twisted. "Speech?" Kingston gave him a knowing look. "You'll be fine. Just speak the truth." The truth. Jason clenched the card in his hand, the weight of the room pressing down on him. Across the hall, Jason caught sight of familiar faces. Principal Carter's, standing stiffly near the bar, his expression carefully neutral. Mason, sipping a drink, eyes narrowing the moment he saw Jason. Some students from his old class, now young adults, dressed in gowns and tuxedos, whispering behind crystal glasses. They all turned to look, some curious, some resentful, some envious. Jason felt his breath catch, but then Kingston's voice cut through his doubt. Remember, Jason, this room, these people, they don't define you, you do. The ceremony began. The headmaster, now a new man named Dr. Ellison, stepped onto the stage thanking Kingston for his unprecedented donation. He spoke of change, of progress, of embracing potential from all walks of life. His words rang hollow to Jason, knowing how easily they could shift with the winds of power. And now, Dr. Ellison announced, please welcome a young man who embodies the very spirit of determination and excellence, Mr. Jason Miller. Applause echoed through the hall as Jason walked to the stage, each step heavier than the last. He stood at the podium, the lights blinding, the faces a blur. He glanced down at the card in his hand, then slowly folded it and set it aside. His voice was quiet at first, but steady. I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. A pause. Because I didn't work hard. Not because I didn't care, but because someone decided I didn't belong. The room fell silent. I was told that my family, my background, made me less, that my place wasn't here among the sons and daughters of privilege, and for a long time I believed that. Jason's gaze swept over the crowd, landing briefly on Carter, on Mason. Then someone gave me a chance, not because I asked for it, but because they saw something in me I didn't yet see in myself. He glanced at Kingston, who gave a small, approving nod. I'm not here tonight to talk about what's fair or what's right. I'm here to say that no one, not a school, not a title, not a bank account, gets to decide your worth. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I've spent months learning, working, pushing past the fear that I wasn't enough. And I still have a long way to go. But I made a promise to myself that I would never again let someone else tell me what I could or couldn't become. Jason paused, the silence pressing but not threatening. To anyone out there who's ever felt less than, who's ever been told they don't belong, know this. Your value isn't something they can take. It's something you carry, and it's up to you to fight for it. The applause started slowly, then built, louder, until the hall echoed with it. Jason stepped back, his chest heaving, and for the first time, he felt like he had truly arrived. After the ceremony, people approached him, some with praise, others with cautious admiration. Even Carter, forced into civility, extended a stiff hand. Well, said Jason, he murmured, you certainly made quite the impression. Jason met his gaze evenly. This isn't about impressions, it's about respect. Carter nodded tightly and walked away. Outside, as the night deepened, Kingston joined Jason beneath the stars. You did well, he said. Jason exhaled. I meant every word. I know, Kingston replied, eyes on the city lights. Now you know what it feels like, to stand tall, even when they want to keep you small. Jason nodded, something solid and unshakable settling inside him. What's next? He asked. Kingston's smile was slow, deliberate. Now we build. Section 5. The Test of Loyalty. The glow of the ceremony had barely faded before the real challenges began. Jason quickly learned that in Kingston's world, applause was fleeting, but scrutiny was constant. The higher he climbed, the more eyes followed, waiting for a slip, a moment of weakness. The city's elite were curious about the boy from nowhere. Some admired him, most didn't. But Jason didn't care about their approval. His promise still burned inside him. He wasn't here to fit in. He was here to prove himself, not just to Kingston, but to himself. 3 weeks after the ceremony, Kingston summoned Jason into his office. The view was stunning, as always. the city stretching endlessly beyond the glass walls, but Kingston's expression was different today, sharper, more guarded. "I have something for you," Kingston said, sliding a file across the desk. Jason opened it, scanning the pages. It was a proposal, a land acquisition deal involving a stretch of farmland just outside Milltown. His heart skipped. "This situation, near my home," Jason said quietly. "I know," Kingston replied. "It's prime land, rich soil, and strategically valuable." Jason frowned, flipping through the documents. "The Millers own some of this land." "Not anymore," Kingston said evenly. "They're in debt, deep debt. We've made them a fair offer." Jason looked up sharply. "They're my neighbors, friends of my father." Kingston leaned back, folding his hands. "This is business, Jason. Loyalty is admirable, but sentiment can cost you everything." Jason's throat tightened. He'd heard rumors of Kingston's ruthless side. Until now, he hadn't seen it up close. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. "Go home," Kingston said. "Meet with them. Convince them it's the right move." Jason stared at him, stunned. "You want me to convince them to sell?" "You know them. They trust you. Use that." The words hit like a punch. Jason stood slowly, the file still in his hands. "I don't know if I can do this." Kingston's eyes narrowed. "You can, and you will." That evening, Jason sat alone in his penthouse, the file open in front of him. The numbers were clear. The land deal was solid. It would make Kingston Enterprises even stronger, and Jason's role in it would mark him as someone who could handle real power. But at what cost? He thought about his father, about the long days in the fields, the sweat and pride that came with honest work. And now, he was being asked to take that away from someone else. The promise he made to himself echoed in his mind. "Never let them decide who you are." Her tone was quick and firm. The next morning, Jason drove himself to Milltown. The city faded into rolling hills and dirt roads, familiar sights stirring old feelings. The Miller farm was just as he remembered, weathered, humble, but alive. He was greeted by Mr. and Mrs. Miller, their faces lighting up with surprise and joy. "Look at you," Mrs. Miller exclaimed, hugging him tightly. "We've seen you on the news. Your father's so proud." Jason smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. They sat on the porch just like old times, sipping sweet tea and catching up. But the weight of why he was there hung between them, unspoken. Finally, Mr. Miller cleared his throat. "We got an offer from Kingston Enterprises. Said they'd buy us out." Jason nodded slowly. "That's why I'm here." Mr. Miller looked away. "Figured as much." Jason swallowed hard. "It's a good deal. You'd be out of debt. You could start fresh." Mrs. Miller's eyes filled with tears. "But this is our home, Jason." "I know," Jason whispered. "We raised our kids here," Mr. Miller said. "This land is who we are." Jason felt like he couldn't breathe. That night, Jason walked the fields alone, the stars bright above him. Every step felt heavier, every breath harder. How could he take this from them? But if he didn't, would Kingston see him as weak? Would he lose everything he'd worked for? The next morning, Jason returned to the farmhouse, his decision made. "I can't ask you to sell," he said quietly. "Not for this." Mr. Miller looked at him, surprised. "I believe in loyalty," Jason continued, "to the people who raised me, to the place that made me. If that costs me my place in Kingston's world, so be it." Mrs. Miller touched his arm gently. "Your father would be proud." Back in the city, Jason stood in Kingston's office, the file unopened in his hands. "Well," Kingston asked. "I couldn't do it," Jason said, voice steady. "I won't." A long silence. Then Kingston stood, walking to the window. "You know," he said slowly, "I wasn't sure you'd come back." Jason's heart pounded. So what happens now? Kingston turned, and for the first time Jason saw something new in his eyes. Respect. You passed, Kingston said. Loyalty isn't weakness, Jason. It's strength. I needed to know where your line was. Jason stared, stunned. You didn't lose anything, Kingston continued. You earned something more valuable. My trust. That night, Jason stood on the balcony, the city below him, the stars above. He had kept his promise. He had stayed true. And he knew now, loyalty, not ambition, was what would carry him forward. Section 6. When the past comes calling. Jason had barely begun to settle into the rhythm of his new life, balancing the pressures of Kingston Enterprises, the growing attention from the business world, and the weight of his own ambitions, when the past, as it often does, found its way back to him. It came not with noise or fanfare, but in the quiet rustle of a letter slipped beneath his door. It was late, the city alive with lights and muted sounds, as Jason returned from another long day at the office. His mind was spinning with numbers, strategies, deals that could shift entire markets. But the envelope lying silently on the floor stopped him cold. No name, no stamp, just his... Jason bent down, heart suddenly uneasy, and picked it up. The paper inside was rough, handwritten in familiar looping letters. I don't know if you still think about us, but I've never stopped thinking about you. I saw your face on TV the other night, standing next to Kingston, looking like you'd made it. Maybe you have, but you promised me once you'd never forget where you came from, and you promised you'd come back. I need you now. Please, if that meant anything, come home. Claire. Jason's hands trembled slightly. Claire. A name he hadn't spoken aloud in over a year. A name that once meant everything. They had grown up together, neighbors, friends, something more when they were young enough to believe the world was simple. She had been his anchor, the one who saw him before the suits, before Kingston, before the fire of ambition. When he left Milltown, he promised her it wouldn't change anything, that no matter how far he went, he'd come back. But he never did. He buried that part of himself in boardrooms and skyscrapers, convincing himself it was necessary, that she would understand. She needed him. The next morning, Jason sat across from Kingston in the executive lounge, the letter folded neatly in his pocket. He hadn't meant to bring it up, but the weight of it pressed against him like a stone. I need a few days, Jason said finally. Kingston looked up from his tablet, one brow raised. Family? Jason hesitated. Something like that. Kingston studied him for a moment, then nodded. Go, but don't run from what you've built here. I'm not running, Jason replied. I just need to face something. Milltown was just as he remembered, quiet, almost untouched by time. The fields swayed in the wind, the same dusty roads led to the same small houses. But when he arrived at Claire's house, something was different. The shutters were closed. The garden, once full of color, lay withered and dry. Jason knocked softly. The door opened, and there she was. Claire. Older, yes, tired perhaps, but still the same eyes, the same presence that had once made Jason feel like the world could stop spinning for a while. Jason, she breathed. Claire. Neither moved for a moment. Then she stepped aside and he walked in. The house was quiet, heavy with unspoken things. Why now? Jason asked finally. Why did you write me? Claire sat down, her hands clasped tightly. Because I didn't know who else to turn to. Jason sat across from her, leaning forward. What's going on? She looked up, eyes shining. It's my father. He's sick, Jason. Really sick. The medical bills are piling up and the farm's falling apart. I tried everything, but we're losing it. Jason's chest tightened. He remembered her father, a strong man, proud, who had treated Jason like a son. I thought maybe, Claire's voice broke, maybe you could help. Jason nodded slowly. Of course I will. But inside, a storm raged. This wasn't just about money. It was about the part of him he had left behind, the part that still loved this place, these people. And Claire. Over the next few days, Jason stayed. He helped around the house, visited her father, now frail but still sharp enough to smile when Jason walked in. They talked about the past, about the choices they made, about the future neither of them had planned for. At night, Jason and Claire sat on the porch, the stars above them like old friends. "Why didn't you ever come back?" Claire asked softly. Jason looked away. "Because I was afraid." "Of what?" "Of seeing what I left behind." She reached for his hand. "You didn't have to." The morning Jason was set to leave, he stood in front of the farmhouse, the weight of everything pressing down on him. Claire joined him, her arms crossed against the chill. "Will you go back to him?" she asked. Jason nodded. "I have to. But this time, I won't forget." She smiled faintly. "You never really did." As he drove away, the past no longer haunted him. It was part of him. And now, he carried it forward. Session 7, the scar he couldn't hide. Jason returned to the city with a different weight in his chest, no longer the heavy, suffocating kind of doubt, but something more bittersweet, a reminder of who he was and who he could never fully leave behind. The moment he stepped back into Kingston Enterprises, everything seemed sharper, the lights brighter, the voices louder, the pace faster, but inside Jason was quieter. He thought of Claire's eyes when he said goodbye, the warmth of her hand in his, her father's tired smile, grateful, trusting. He had done what he could. He'd paid the bills, he'd set up a fund to help them keep the farm. He'd left a part of himself there and taken something with him. The past was no longer something to run from. But not everyone in this world respected scars from old battles. A few days later, Kingston called Jason into his private office. The mood was different, tense, guarded. "Here's something you should see," Kingston said, gesturing to the large screen on the wall. Jason frowned as a video began to play. His news segment, his speech at Westbridge, clips of him in the city, headlines about the farm boy protege. But the tone was off. While Jason Miller's rise under Samuel Kingston has captivated many, questions have surfaced about his background. Sources close to Kingston Enterprises suggest that Miller's ties to rural landowners may present conflicts in upcoming business dealings. Jason's stomach twisted. "What is this?" Kingston turned to him, his face unreadable. "Someone's digging. They're questioning your loyalty." Jason stood, heart pounding. "You know I haven't done anything wrong." "I do," Kingston replied, "but perception matters, and you left suddenly without telling anyone why. People are wondering where your loyalties really lie." Jason clenched his fists. "I went home to help someone who needed me." "And in doing so, you made yourself vulnerable," Kingston said, voice cold but not unkind. "Now they'll use that against you, against..." Jason looked away, the shame creeping in. "What do you want me to do?" Kingston leaned forward. "I want you to face it. You gave them a crack. Now you have to seal it." The next few days were brutal. The media swirled with rumors. Some accused Jason of favoritism, of leveraging Kingston's name for personal gain. Others painted him as an outsider who didn't belong in the ruthless world of corporate power. Jason felt the walls closing in. Everywhere he went, eyes followed. Whispers grew. But what stung the most was when one of Kingston's senior advisors, a man named Marcus Hale, confronted him during a board meeting. "You carry your past like a badge," Marcus said, voice sharp. "But in this world, scars are weaknesses. You do well to remember that." Jason's jaw tightened. Later that night, standing in front of the mirror in his penthouse, He looked at himself, really looked. He rolled up his sleeve slowly, revealing a thin, faded scar that ran along his forearm, a reminder of a childhood accident, of the day he'd saved a trapped calf from drowning in the creek back home. His father had called it his first mark of manhood. But now it was just another thing they could twist, another story they could spin. Jason walked into Kingston's office the next morning, the scar still visible on his arm. "I'm not hiding anymore," he said. Kingston looked up, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I won't bury who I am. Not for them. Not for anyone." Kingston studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Good," he said. "Then prove it." Jason called for a press conference. The room was packed, the air electric with curiosity and doubt. He stepped to the podium. No speech, no notes. "I've heard the rumors," Jason began, voice steady. "I know what they're saying, that I don't belong here, that my past makes me weak." He paused, rolling up his sleeve, holding his arm high. His sky. "It's not weakness, it's proof. Proof that I've fought, that I've worked, that I've bled for everything I have." Silence. "I didn't come from privilege. I came from fields, from sweat, from nights wondering if I'd ever be more than a farm boy. And I carry that with me. Every day." His eyes swept over the crowd. "If that scares you, good. Because I'm not here to make you comfortable. I'm here to show you that strength doesn't come from where you start. It comes from what you survive." The room was still. Then slowly, applause began. First a few hands, then more, until the room echoed with it. Jason stepped back, heart pounding. He had faced them. And he hadn't flinched. Later, Kingston stood beside him, a rare smile on his lips. "They'll still come for you," he warned. Jason nodded. Because scars weren't something to hide. They were something to wear. Proudly. Section 8. The truth that breaks everything. For a while it felt like Jason had won. The press calmed, the whispers dulled. His speech about scars, about survival, had gone viral, and people were seeing him differently now, not just as Kingston's protege, but as someone who had earned his place. Even Kingston seemed more open, more trusting. Jason was given more responsibility, invited into deeper conversations about the future of the company. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't standing in anyone's shadow. But peace in this world never lasted long. And sometimes the greatest threats didn't come from enemies. They came from truths long buried. It began with a box, delivered to his office, late one evening. No return address. Jason opened it cautiously. Inside, a stack of old documents, photographs, letters yellowed with age. And at the top, a single sheet of paper. "I thought you should know the truth about the man you trust most." Jason's blood ran cold. His fingers trembled as he sifted through the contents. Land deeds, contracts, letters written in a hand he didn't recognize. But then, one photograph stopped him. It was old, grainy, but clear enough. A younger Samuel Kingston, standing in front of a piece of land Jason knew too well. A Miller farm, his father's land. Jason's heart pounded as he read through the documents, piecing together a story he had never been told. Years ago, before Kingston Enterprises had risen to power, before the suits and helicopters, there had been a deal, a dirty deal. Kingston had acquired the land for his first major agricultural project through a loophole forcing out smaller farmers who couldn't keep up with the debt, including Jason's grandfather. The land his father worked, the soil he bled into, had once been theirs, stolen, rebranded, and used as the foundation for Kingston's empire. Jason's hands shook as he realized his father hadn't just helped Kingston. His father had lost everything to him. The next morning, Jason didn't go to the office. He drove. Miles and miles, until the city disappeared behind him, swallowed by the same fields he once called home. He didn't tell Claire he was coming. He didn't know what he'd say. But when he arrived at the farm, she was there, waiting on the porch, as if she'd known. "What's wrong?" she asked, stepping closer. Jason handed her the photograph. Her eyes widened, then filled with something between sorrow and fury. "I never wanted you to find out this way," she whispered. "You knew?" She nodded, tears brimming. "My father told me, years ago. But we couldn't prove anything. And then Kingston, he came back. He helped. We didn't want to drag you into it." Jason turned away, the betrayal burning deep. "He's been lying to me this whole time." "No," Claire said, stepping forward. "He didn't lie. He just never told you." Jason clenched his fists. The same thing. He left the farm without another word, his mind a storm. Everything he had believed, every promise, every lesson, built on a foundation of stolen earth. His earth. Back in the city, Jason stormed into Kingston's office, slamming the box onto the desk. Kingston looked up, calm as ever. "You knew." A pause. Then a slow nod, yes. Jason's voice shook. "My family. You took everything from them." The man's hand caught in his chest. "I did what I had to do," Kingston replied. "To survive, to build. You used me. I gave you a future." Jason stepped back, disgusted. "You took my past." Kingston stood, his eyes cold now, hard. "The world isn't fair, Jason. It never was. But I gave you more than anyone else ever would." Jason stared at him, the man who had lifted him from nothing, now exposed for what he truly was. A thief. A builder. A liar. A savior. That night, Jason sat alone in his penthouse, the city sprawling out before him. He thought of his father, of Claire, of everything he'd fought for. And he realized something that broke him more than any truth. He didn't know who he was anymore. Section 9. The choice he never wanted to make. The silence of the city at dawn was unlike the quiet of the fields. It wasn't peaceful. It was expectant, heavy with choices waiting to be made. And for Jason, that morning it felt like the weight of two worlds had settled on his shoulders, demanding an answer. The documents, the photos, Kingston's calm admission, it all spun through his mind like a storm without end. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. Because no matter which way he turned, he stood to lose something. His loyalty, his family, his future. A knock at the door broke the stillness. Jason opened it to find Elise, Kingston's assistant, standing there holding a sleek black envelope. "What is this?" Jason asked, voice raw. Elise's eyes softened. A final offer. He took the envelope and opened it slowly. Inside, a letter signed by Kingston himself. "Jason, you've come far, farther than most, and you've earned everything you've received. But this is the crossroads we all face eventually. You can walk away now with what you've learned, and no harm will come to you or your family. Or you can stay, inherit everything I've built. The truth is, no empire is clean. You can't change the past, but you can decide what the future looks like. The choice is yours." Yes, he was. Jason's hands tightened around the paper. He met Claire later that day at the old cafe near the edge of town, the place they used to talk about dreams too big for their small lives. She sat across from him, her eyes searching his. "But what did he say?" Jason slid the letter across the table. She read it in silence, then looked up. "And what are you going to do?" Jason shook his head. "I don't know. If I stay, I could change things, from the inside. But if I walk away, I lose it all, everything I've worked for." Claire reached across the table, her hand resting on his. "Do you really lose it all, Jason? Or do you finally find who you are?" He looked away, his throat tight. You don't understand what it's like to be so close, to finally have power, respect. I understand more than you think, she said softly. I've watched you fight so hard not to become like them, but if you accept this, are you still you? That night, Jason stood alone in Kingston's office, waiting. The city lights burned outside, cold and distant. Kingston entered, his presence filling the room as always. You've made a decision, he said. Jason nodded slowly. I have. A pause. Well, Jason stepped forward, placing the letter on the desk. Walking away. Kingston's expression didn't change. You're sure? I'd rather build something of my own, Jacob said, voice steady, than inherit something that was never right to begin with. Atkins studied him, then gave a slow nod. I thought you might. Jason blinked. You're not going to stop me? No, Kingston said, because I didn't bring you here to be me, Jason. I brought you here to see if you could survive. And you did. Jason frowned, confused. You'll make enemies, Kingston warned. Real ones, and you'll have nothing to protect you but your name. Then I'll make that name mean something. Kingston extended his hand. Jason hesitated, then shook it. This is the last time we meet like this, Kingston said. Jason nodded. I know. Days later, Jason stood before a different kind of crowd. In Milltown, in a small hall filled with farmers, small business owners, and old friends, he announced the beginning of something new. A foundation built to protect those like his family, those who worked the land, who fought quietly, who were forgotten by power. He wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a CEO. But he was his own. Section 10. The legacy he chose to build. A year had passed. 1 year since Jason Miller walked away from the glittering towers of Kingston Enterprises. 1 year since he turned down everything: wealth, power, prestige, for something more fragile, more uncertain, but more real. The sun rose gently over Milltown, casting golden light across the fields that stretched for miles. The air smelled of earth, of morning dew, of beginnings. Jason stood at the edge of the land that once defined his limits, and now defined his purpose. This was not the life he had once dreamed of when he stood outside Westbridge Academy, looking up at a world that didn't want him. This was better, because this was his. The foundation Jason had started, the Miller Trust, had grown faster than he expected. At first, it was just a handful of families, struggling farmers, those who had been on the edge of losing everything to the same corporate giants that once owned him. Jason used what he had learned, the sharp strategies, the financial instincts Kingston had helped him sharpen, and he fought for them. And people noticed. The media, once fascinated by his rise and fall under Kingston, now watched with curiosity as he forged a new path, one rooted in the very soil he was born from. Jason didn't just want to protect the land. He wanted to build a future where no one like him, no boy with dirt on his hands and dreams in his heart, would ever be told they didn't belong. One late afternoon, Jason walked through the fields, his boots sinking into the soft ground. The sky above was vast, the kind of sky you didn't see from penthouse windows. Claire walked beside him, her hand brushing his. "You've changed this place," she said, her voice warm. Jason shook his head. "I didn't change it, I just gave it a chance." They reached the old Miller farmhouse, now restored, its porch once again filled with life. Kids laughed in the distance, chasing each other through the grass. Jason sat on the steps, watching them, a quiet pride settling in his chest. He thought about Kingston sometimes, not with anger, but with clarity. The man had given him an opportunity, but Jason had given himself something more valuable. A legacy not built on others' losses, but on shared victories. Weeks later, a letter arrived. No envelope. To a folded page, crisp and clean. "Jason, I saw what you've done," I expected no less. You made your choice, and I made mine. Our paths are different now, but should you ever need to cross again, you know where to find me. Misaki. Jason folded the letter carefully, placing it in the drawer of his desk. A part of his story, but no longer the defining one. The town gathered one evening under the stars, lanterns glowing, music playing softly in the background. It was a celebration, a harvest fair, a tradition long forgotten but now revived. Jason stood before them, not as a savior, not as a billionaire, but as one of their own. I once thought I had to leave this place to become someone, he said, his voice steady, carried by the hush of night. But what I've learned is that who we are isn't about where we go. It's about what we stand for and who we stand. The crowd erupted in cheers, not just for him, but for all of them. For a future they could believe in. Later, as the stars stretched wide above, Claire joined him by the fire, leaning into his side. Do you ever miss it? She asked. Jason looked out at the land, at the people, at the life he had chosen. He said softly, because for the first time, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Concussion, what it really means to win. Jason once believed that success meant proving everyone wrong, that standing on top of the world next to men like Samuel Kingston would make the pain of his past disappear, the sting of being told he wasn't enough, the ache of being cast out for where he came from. But now, as the dust of ambition settled and the noise of power faded, he understood something deeper. Winning wasn't about defeating others. It was about staying true to yourself when the world tried to shape you into something else. Walking away from Kingston wasn't easy. It meant giving up the chance to control empires, to command respect with a single glance. But Jason chose something harder, something richer. He chose to build, not on the backs of the broken, but with the hands of those willing to rise together. In Milltown, Jason didn't find weakness. He found roots. The lesson: life will always pull you between the desire for more and the need for meaning, between the comfort of success and the cost of your soul. Jason's journey is a reminder. True legacy is not inherited, it's created. Strength is not in the titles you hold, but in the values you refuse to abandon. Love and loyalty are not chains, they are anchors that hold you steady in the fiercest storms. He could have been a king in a city that never truly saw him. Instead, he became a leader in a place that knew him by name. And in the end, what he gained was something Kingston's world could never offer. Peace, a push, and a life worth living. A message for you, the reader. If you've ever questioned whether walking away means failure, know this. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave behind what no longer serves your heart. Jason's story is for anyone who has been torn between power and peace, between the dream of proving something to the world and the deeper dream of living with no regrets. You don't have to choose what's easy. Choose what's right.
Thank you for watching this Millionaire Love Stories today. Every love story is a journey, filled with passion, heartbreak, and unforgettable moments. And here at Millionaire Love Stories, we bring you the most captivating tales of love, wealth, and destiny. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget, like to support more incredible content. Comment your thoughts. Would you choose love over riches? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Millionaire Love Stories, because love knows no limits. Because love changes everything. See you in the next story.